I'm Judy Shaw for NYSE Floor Talk. For the first time in almost a decade, a U.S. rocket has taken humans to space. The SpaceX Crew Dragon successfully lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center on May 30th, carrying NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, and docked at the International Space Station less than 19 hours later. Joining me today to talk about this historic mission is NASA Deputy Administrator Jim Morhard. Jim, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, it's my honor, Judy. Thank you.
Now, Jim, tell us about this historic mission and why it's so important for our country.
You know, Judy, you think about for 50 years, we have been developing, building, launching, and operating spacecraft. And this is the first time we have worked with a commercial entity to develop, build, launch, own, and operate the rocket and the spacecraft. We're really looking to begin a new era in space exploration. And when I say that, we want to be a customer to commercial entities in low Earth orbit. That's what we're trying to do. We had a competition back in 2014 between Boeing and SpaceX. They both got awards under a firm fixed price contract, and that allowed them to start driving down cost because they were responsible for the costs. What it really did was really increase innovation, and that our economic model works. And there is such a demand in space for research. We see it at the space station. When we get the full complement of astronauts up there, our research is going to increase by 300%. And so with that, we're seeing that it will expand exponentially. It will exponentially expand. When I say that, we're really expecting that as the demand grows, so will the supply. And we're hoping that with that, commercial entities will start building commercial space stations in low Earth orbit. That really is going to give us the opportunity to put our focus on getting to the moon, being there sustainably, and going on to deep space.
Now, why were Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley the right astronauts for this mission?
You know, they're just great guys. They both are test pilots. Doug is a Marine Corps aviator, and Bob, Air Force test pilot. They both have been to the space station twice, so they had the experiences that we were looking for. They also the administrator, Jim Bridenstine, and I went and visited with them as they were suiting up to go for this flight. And there was a lot more joking around than there was, you couldn't really tell the gravity of the situation when we were with them, which is just, that's a representation of who they are and what we were looking for. It's not it takes a special person to be an astronaut. It takes a special person to strap yourself on a rocket that's never, with a system that's never been tested before. They're the best that America has to offer, is how we look at them.
Oh, yes, indeed. Now, you mentioned that this was a test mission. So what were their responsibilities as they were traveling to the International Space Station?
You know, this mission is, you're right, it's an end-to-end test mission. And when I say that, it begins with a launch. It gets to getting into orbit. It's making sure while they're heading towards the space station that they are checking out whether they can control the spacecraft. Bob Behnken said at one point, this really felt like I was flying a Dragon. He said it was a little bit rougher than the shuttle in his past experiences. But it's also docking with the International Space Station. It's making sure that our systems on the International Space Station and the Dragon crew capsule work together. There are a lot of different parts that have to make sure that we have connectivity. When it is time to come home, it's going to make sure that they can undock, that they can deorbit, that they can get through our Earth's atmosphere safely to get, we haven't seen a splashdown since the last Apollo mission. That's more than half the population of the United States has not witnessed going into the ocean. They're going to land somewhere off of the coast of Florida if it all goes right. And then their recovery, which is another test that we're going to do. What we're really trying to do is certify this rocket and this capsule so that we can start sending a full complement of astronauts to the space station to start doing that research that I talked about.
So how long do you anticipate that they will remain at the International Space Station?
Judy, that's a great question. And I say that because so many people ask us that. And there are a number of variables. First off, we're going into hurricane season in Florida and in the area where they would splash down. As many saw it, we scrubbed the mission once because of weather. And we did that because Apollo 12 was hit by lightning twice. I mean, these things happen down there. So we really have to watch the weather, and that will help determine the day they come down. If you take a close look at actual pictures of the Dragon crew capsule, you'll see at the very end there are a lot of solar panels that give it the electricity it needs. Those panels degrade over time with the solar radiation in space. Now, we're not going to come close to them being degraded, but we're also going to be extremely careful to make sure that we don't even come close. So that may drive us home earlier. And the third part is we're preparing that crew, the first, what we call Crew 1. After there's the certification, that Crew 1 will go. Well, they have to be ready at a certain time. And so we've got to make sure that they're ready to go. It won't be immediately after they come home, but it will be soon thereafter. And so those three variables right now are what will drive that decision. It could be anywhere from July to September.
Okay. All right. And finally, Jim, what is next for NASA?
Oh, gosh. Thank you. You give me chills when you say that. First off, let me be clear. We're just getting started. This is the beginning. This is the dawn of a new space age. In July, the window where the planets of Mars and Earth will align, and it allows us to launch a rover up there. And that rover, we've landed 8 times on Mars, and we have a number of very expensive craters where we tried to land on Mars. So we're going to try to do it again, and we're going to be looking at our descent and entry and landing to make sure, again, we can do this. If you look back at Apollo 11, there were 23 precursor missions before we landed on the moon. Well, this is one of those precursor missions before we land humans on Mars. So that will go up. We're going to have a helicopter on it. And if we can have it, we're going to test out whether the atmosphere there can support flight. And if it does, then we'll be able to use the helicopter as a forward scout for our astronauts. We'll be doing a number of other things, checking out whether our spacesuits will take fabric up there to see whether it can handle the environment as well as their face shields. So that's in the short term. Then we're also working on the largest, most powerful rocket we've ever built, and it's called the Space Launch System. We've finished testing the primary test for the capsule that'll go on. It's called Orion, and the mission is called Artemis. And we call it Artemis because we're going to land the first woman on the moon along with the next man. And Artemis was the sister of Apollo. Homer called Artemis the torch bringer. And I'd like to think that's what we're going to do, is bring new light to the world in our exploration. But with that, we're going to get to the moon. We've been told by the president and vice president to get there by 2024, and we're hot on it. It really lit a fire under NASA when they told us that. And so we're working on that as fast as we can. But it's to be there sustainably as well as preparing to get to Mars.
Oh, wow. Well, Jim, you just gave me chills. So
You
much to
got
look
enough.
forward to. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been so wonderful to talk with you. And we are all so excited on the successful launch of the SpaceX Crew Dragon and looking forward to so much more with NASA. This is
Yes.
just such a
Yeah,
wonderful time.
Judy, if I could just wrap it up.
Please.
I've talked a lot about our objectives, but this is also about inspiring the next generation.
Mhm.
This is about our future explorers. And with that, it's also about bringing this country together again. And this happened in 1968. We had lost Martin Luther King. We had lost Bobby Kennedy. We had the Vietnam War, the My Lai massacre, and then we landed on the moon. And it really helped unite the country again. And we hope to contribute to that in what our efforts today. Those are part of what our intent is. That's what NASA is for, to help humankind. And we're going to continue to do that. So again, thank you for having me.
Wonderful and well said, Jim. Thank you so much for joining me on NYSE Floor Talk.
Take care.